we know there's a lot happening in the gambling and gaming industry across Africa. What can you tell us about the general trends of how gambling and related businesses are taxed across Africa?
Well, I think it's another of these cases where governments are saying a fast-growing industry, and they assume some profits in it, and thinking, well, how do we get some profits out of that? And I think linked to that is a bit of an emotional point on sin taxing. We don't think people should be gambling. How do we discourage them and use the tax system to do that discouraging? I think that's the two prongs of it. And you sometimes hear advisors on tax policy saying the two things at different stages in a conversation. Oh, there's a big opportunity to get tax out of this industry. You should increase the taxes on it. And by the way, the tax industry shouldn't exist anyway. So shove up the taxes to a bigger extent so you can shut it down. Well, you can't have both. But
Yeah.
that's what they're trying to think of. So some inconsistent logic. But yes, what we have seen is that countries have responded to what is a fast-growing industry. And when we say fast-growing, I'm particularly talking about the online sports betting, and perhaps sometimes the ones with physical shops, but heavily internet based gambling on sports fixtures. But related to that, because it's often by the same operators, are numbers based games or casino type games, but on online, etc. And yeah, all comes up from the same company, and ultimately the governments want their share, or perhaps a bit more than their share of the profits.
Okay, so I can hear that there's a strong appetite to tax gambling businesses, both because it's growing across Africa, and secondly, because whether rightly or wrongly, people are arguing it should be taxed in a kind of sin tax approach. Are you able to identify any trends in how various African countries are levying tax on gambling businesses?
Yeah, I think there's a few trends. The broad trend is let's tax the industry more. So
Okay.
that's the starting point. Then they'll think, how do we do it? So a proliferation of taxes and then changing the tax basis. So you can tax the gambling company, largely on its profits, but perhaps also on its activity, how many bets it takes. You can tax the customers, which can be done either when they place a bet or when they win a bet. And that's where it comes the winning customers, or the whole customer base. So those are the broad things. And increasingly, we're seeing countries trying to tax more than one of those bases, or perhaps all of them. So you pay tax when you place your bet, and you pay tax again when you win your bet, which seems a bit strange, but that's certainly I can think of some countries doing that. The third is then changing the tax base. So we're seeing things, instead of taxing the profits of the company under the normal regime, you'll suddenly start saying, well, perhaps we should have a special income tax regime. And you see this start in Tanzania, got copied in Zambia, got copied again in Ghana, and that causes further complexity. So instead of taxing profits, essentially you're taxing gross gaming revenue at a
Wow. So a
revenue
turnover tax.
turnover tax, essentially. But depending on the country, there may be a second one hiding in the excise or betting duty rules. And again, then there's complexities with the VAT. A lot of countries just assume there's VAT, so actually legislate for the VAT. If you're lucky, there won't be a separate betting tax, but if you're unlucky, there'll be two.
Wow. And what about the winnings? I remember when I studied tax back, 200 years ago, I remember learning that winnings were tax exempt in the UK, which I always thought was great, whereas they're taxed, for instance, in America. Across Africa, generally, are we seeing winnings being taxed in the hands of the gambler?
Increasingly, we're seeing withholding taxes levied on it. I'm not sure this is intellectually sound, but people perhaps see the winnings as income, but there's not very many people who really make a living or an income out of betting. The betting companies generally are profitable. That's money that has been lost by the customers. So I'm not sure it's intellectually sound, and I think there can be problems. If it's a withholding tax, then effectively you just say, well, you got lucky, we're going to have some of it. You're sharing your winnings with us, the government. If it's been phrased in such a way that it's income tax and it's not a final tax, then you might start seeing people try to claim their losses. This is why, when I was the UK tax inspector, we didn't go chasing after people's winnings to tax them, because there's more losses than winnings, and you don't want to give tax away.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah. Okay, so you've spoken us through how the tax profits on gambling is how the profits on gambling is taxed and also the winnings. What about the actual betting activity? How are you seeing taxation authorities across Africa deal with them?
It's a bit of a split. Sometimes there'll be a tax on the gross gaming revenue of the operator. That's his turnover, as you said earlier, and that could be like a excise or a special betting tax. Sometimes it'll be on the customer. So you place a bet, we're going to take an excise on it, and they'll be phrased in such a way that's a customer cost. You bet 190 gets into the stakes, for example. They're round sums, and in some strange countries, Ethiopia comes to mind. You'll see them doing both. So there's a tax on the company on his betting revenue and a tax on the customer as well, which seems grossly unfair, but perhaps the industry is not in a position to make too many noises about it. I think the other one there is sometimes the law is not always as well phrased as it should be, and that goes with all tax law. It's always very hard to make it perfect. But if take an example of withholding tax on winnings, what are your winnings? If I stake 50 and I win 100, so it's a 2-to-1 bet. So I've got 100 in my pocket now at the end of the event. Should I be taxed on the 100,
On the
or should I be
50?
taxed on the 50, being the amount I've actually won? Because the 50 stake was a deposit pending the event. And different countries take different views, and different tax authorities read the law different. I've certainly seen a number of places where the law is quite clear, and the tax authority officials are equally clear but differently, and want to maximise the amount. And even the VAT rules can be awkward. You know, they may say that it should be on the VAT should be applied on the net, the stakes less the winnings, but in practice, I can think of again at least one country where they'll say no. Despite what we've written in the law, we want the VAT on the full bet. And in that one particular country, they insisted it be ran through a fiscalization device.
Wow. So that's a significant increase on the cost of betting in that country.
Yep.
Wow. And any other taxes that apply to the gambling industry across Africa?
Well, yes, because not only you've got all the special taxes on betting, but you've got all the normal taxes. So how does VAT apply? If you're exempt from VAT, which a number of countries have said you're exempt, then you've got all your costs. You're still going to pay VAT on those. If you're importing services such as paying an offshore supplier for your software, again, is there a reverse charge? In many countries there will be, which could be a problem if you're exempt. Other ones, money transfer taxes, which may not be a direct tax on the betting company, but money's got to get into those wallets somehow and out of them in the case of winnings back to the customer. So those could be transfers, and an increasing trend of countries across the continent to tax electronic money transfers. Amounts may not be huge, but they build up, they add up. And again, the question then, whose cost is it? Is it the betting company, or is it going to be the customer? Because if the betting company makes the customer pay, he may say, well, I won't bother.
So again, the bottom line seems to be increasing taxes of different types impacting the gaming industry and a big appetite to tax them more and more. And secondly, lots of complexity in terms of what tax will apply and who it will apply to.
That's about the size of it. And I think what it comes down to is, in many cases, do your research, work out where the problems are, what the taxes are, how they're going to apply to you, make sure you understand it, and then be ready for government using you as a simple device for getting more money out of the economy every time they have a budget. Yeah. People aren't drinking as much beer, so they're going to tax the gambling instead. It seems to be how it goes.